In this first part of the last account of the book of Judges, like the previous account, involves a Levite traveling around Israel and includes a connection to Bethlehem. The next book in the Bible, Ruth, also occurs during the time of the Judges and is set in Bethlehem. So these three accounts together are connected. Now, the first two in the book of Judges here show how Israel fell short in their understanding and worship of God and in their treatment of their neighbors, their fellow Israelites. The book of Ruth stands in sharp contrast to these two accounts, with the hero Boaz demonstrating all the traits that God desires from his people. In this final account in the book of Judges, a Levite is on his journey up to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and along the way he stops in the city of Gibeah. Now, the inhospitality of the residents of the city of Gibeah towards the Levite and their treatment of his concubine compares unfavorably with the residents of Sodom, in which God had destroyed. Now, what can we learn from this situation in Israel and these events in Gibeah? What role does the Levite play, and what does this teach us? Now, I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is the Promise of Rest. This account opens with the third assertion that there was no king in Israel. The first time this statement was made, we learn that a Levite leaves Bethlehem to find a place where he can work his way. The second time this statement is followed by the members of the tribe of Dan sending out spies to seek a place that they could conquer and establish as a safe place to live. Now, in this third recitation that there is no king in Israel, a Levite will go on a journey. We begin in the hill country of Ephraim, which is where Micah in the previous account in Judges was from. Now, this Levite, like the Levite Jonathan in the previous account, is a guest or sojourner. Judges 19, verse 1. And it cometh to pass in those days, when there is no king in Israel, that there is a man, a Levite, a sojourner, in the sides of the hill country of Ephraim, and he taketh to him a wife, a concubine, out of Bethlehem, Judah. The Levite takes a woman from Bethlehem of the tribe of Judah as his wife or concubine. Now, most translations leave out the word wife and just translate the word concubine. However, the Hebrew uses both the word for wife and the word for concubine in this account. The ArtScroll translation reads that he married a concubine wife. Now, this distinction is important because it emphasizes the heinous treatment this wife receives at the hands of the Benjamites in Gibeah. Now, they will receive a similar treatment in judgment when Benjamin discovers that there are no women available for them to take as wives. After the marriage, it seems that the concubine wife committed adultery and fled to her father's house in Bethlehem. Judges 19, 2-3. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there 4 whole months. Then her husband arose and went after her, to speak kindly to her and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now, did the wife commit adultery for which the punishment is death, or is there another way to understand this text? Adam Clarke's commentary cites the understanding of the translation. Neither the Vulgate, Septuagint, Targum, nor Josephus understand this word as implying any act of conjugal infidelity on the part of the woman. Now, they merely state that the parties disagreed, and the woman returned to her father's house. If she had been a whore or adulteress, it is not very likely that her husband would have gone after her to speak friendly, literally to speak to her heart, and entreat her to return. The Vulgate simply states that she was angry with him, the Targum that she despised him, and Josephus that she was alienated or separated herself from him. Now I think the true meaning to be among the above interpretations. They had contentions. She ceased to love him. Her affections were alienated from him, and she left his house and went to the home of her father. Now, however, there is still the possibility that she literally committed adultery, and in spite of this, he spoke kindly to her after 4 months. In the book of Hosea, God instructed the prophet Hosea to marry an adulteress, repudiate her status as his wife, and then take her back. Now, God uses this as a metaphor of his own relationship with Israel. Hosea relays God's words to Israel when he restores her status as his wife. Hosea 2:14-15. Therefore, behold, I will allure her, I will bring her into the wilderness and speak comfort to her. I will give her her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. She shall sing there, as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. Now God will speak comfort to Israel, literally. He speaks to her heart, just like the Levite spoke to the heart of his wife. In the account in Judges, the Levite goes to Bethlehem to retrieve his wife. He is greeted with gladness by the woman's father. Now, the father wines and dines the Levite for 3 days. When the Levite decides to return to his house, which was apparently still in the hill country of Ephraim, the man delays the Levite an additional day and encourages him to stay longer. Finally, on the 5th day, the Levite insists on leaving, but the father detains him until the afternoon. Judges 19:9-10. And when the man stood to depart, and his concubine and his servants, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, Look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go your way early, so that you may get home. However, the man was not willing to spend that night, so he rose and departed and came to opposite to Gibeah, that is Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. Now Bethlehem is only 6 miles from Jerusalem, so the man had not traveled very far before he had to seek a place to stay for the night. Gibeah was inhabited by the Jebusites, so the Levite was reluctant to seek shelter among a people who were not Israelites. Judges 19:12-13. But his master said to him, We will not turn aside here into a city of foreigners, who are not of the children of Israel. We will go on to Gibeah. So he said to his servant, Come, let us draw near to one of these places, and spend the night in Gibeah or in Ramah. The man traveled roughly another 4 miles before the sun went down as he was approaching Gibeah in the tribal lands of Benjamin. The Hebrew word for foreigner is nokri, number 5237 in Strong's Concordance, meaning strange, non-relative, alien, or foreigner. This is the same word that Ruth uses to describe herself as a foreigner when she meets Boaz. Now, since the Levite is not certain what kind of welcome he would receive among the Jebusites, he goes on to a city held by the tribe of Benjamin, a fellow Israelite. And once there, he does not receive the welcome that he expected. Judges 19, verse 15. They turned aside there to go into lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, for no one would take them into his house to spend the night. Now this contrasts with the welcome Abraham extended to 3 strangers who approached his tent. Genesis 18, 2-4. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the ground, and said, My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Please, let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree." Abraham ran to greet the strangers and offered them hospitality and care. These 3 strangers turned out to be angels of the Lord on their way to judge Sodom for the way that they had treated the stranger who entered the gates of Sodom. The Levite waited in the open square at the gate of the city until finally a man from Ephraim, who was also sojourning to Gibeah, returned to the city after a day working in the fields. Judges 19:16-17. Just then an old man came in from his work in the field at evening, who also was from the mountains of Ephraim. He was staying in Gibeah, whereas the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" The 2 men conversed and discovered that each of them was from the mountains of Ephraim. The Levite revealed that he was on his way to the house of the Lord at Shiloh, and had not received an offer of hospitality from any of the residents of Gibeah. Judges 19:18-20. So he said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judah. Now I am going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house. Although we have both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and bread and wine for myself, for your female servant, and for the young man who is with your servant, there is no lack of anything." And the old man said, "Peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the open square." The Ephraimite invited the man into his home and extended the same kind of care to him that Abraham extended to the 3 strangers. When the 3 strangers left Abraham, 2 of them continued on to Sodom, where Lot, a stranger in Sodom, extended hospitality to 2 visitors. Now, like the Ephraimite, Lot urged them not to spend the night in the open square. Genesis 19:2-3. And he said, "Hear now, my lords, please turn in to your servant's house and spend the night, and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go your way." And they said, "No, but we will spend the night in the open square." But he insisted strongly, so they turned into him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. From here on out, the accounts of the visitors in Sodom and the Levite in Gibeah continue to parallel each other. All the men of Sodom, young and old, demanded that Lot turn over the 2 men to them so they can abuse them sexually. In Gibeah, the event only differed in the detail that only some of the men of the city demanded that the Levite be turned over to them for the same purpose. Judges 19:22-23. As they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house and beat on the door. They spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him carnally." But the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not commit this outrage." The phrase perverted men is literally the sons of Belial. The name Belial is number 1100, meaning without profit, worthless, wicked, evil, and ungodly. Matthew Henry comments on how the sons of Benjamin had become the sons of Belial. The sinners are here called sons of Belial, that is, ungovernable men, men that would endure no yoke, children of the devil, for he is Belial, resembling him and joining him in rebellion against God and his government. Sons of Benjamin, of whom Moses had said, "The beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him," Deuteronomy 33:12, have become such sons of Belial, that an honest man cannot lodge in safety among them. The similarities with Sodom continue. In response to the men of Sodom, Lot offered to turn over his 2 daughters to protect his guests. In Gibeah, the Ephraimite offered to turn over his daughter and the Levite's wife. In Sodom, the 2 visitors prevented Lot from turning over his daughters. However, in Gibeah, the Levite quickly pushed his wife out the door to preserve his own life. Judges 19, verse 25. But the men would not heed him. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them, and they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, they let her go. The Levite did not just take his concubine wife and bring her out to the sons of Belial. He seized her and dragged her out. Adam Clark comments, the word kazi yakazak, which we here translate simply took, signifies rather to take or seize by violence. The woman would not go out to them, but her graceless husband forced her to go in order that he might save his own body. He could have had but little love for her, and this was the cause of their separation before. When the woman was released, she made her way back to the home of the Ephraimite, where she collapsed on the threshold and died with her hands extended over the threshold. It's as if she was claiming the right of the protection of the threshold covenant, which had been denied to her. According to the observance of the threshold covenant, when she was received into the house the previous night, she should have been able to count on the protection of those within the house. Judges 19, 26 and 27. Then the woman came as the day was dawning, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was, till it was light. When her master arose in the morning, he opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way. There was his concubine, had fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. The change in tone of the relationship between the man and woman is evident in these words and his actions. She is merely a concubine, and he is her master, not her husband. He speaks harshly to her without caring how she has been abused, not realizing that she was dead. Judges 19, verse 28. And he said to her, "Get up, and let's be going." But there was no answer. So the man lifted her onto the donkey, and the man got up and went to his place. There was no angel to rescue this woman. There was no angel to safely guide her out of the city when morning came, like there was for Lot and his family in Sodom. There was no outpouring of the wrath of God on Gibeah as there was on Sodom. Instead, the Levite loaded her body onto the donkey and carried her back to his house in the hills of Ephraim. Judges 19, 29 through 30. When he entered his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And so it was that all who saw it said, "No such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up." Now, did the Levite send all 12 pieces together throughout Israel, or did he send one piece to each tribe? The commentators differ on how they read this action. Either way, it would have been very gruesome to receive a cut-up body or parts of a body. Now, since there was no king in Israel and perhaps no appointed judge over the entire nation, the Levite didn't have recourse to an established court system. So he appealed to the entire nation, declaring that no such deed had been done in Israel. The actions of the Gibeonites were in many ways worse than the actions of the residents of Sodom. The Gibeonites preyed on their fellow Israelites. They did all that God had told Moses was an abomination to him. Luke 10 tells the story that when Yeshua was teaching the people, he was questioned about the greatest commandment. Yeshua answered that the first commandment was to love God, and the second commandment was to love his neighbor as himself. Yeshua then goes on to explain who the neighbor is in a parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, like with the Levite Jonathan, the Danites, and the Levite of this account, the story opens with a man on a journey. In Yeshua's parable, the man is attacked by thieves and left for dead. First a priest and then a Levite pass by, ignoring the man. And finally, a Samaritan, traveling on the road, sees the man and takes care of him. This is the man that Yeshua indicates is the neighbor. Look at Luke 10:36 and 37. So which of these three do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Now later, when Yeshua is teaching his disciples about the Son of Man coming in his glory and judges the nation, those who are judged unrighteous include those who refuse to take in the stranger. Matthew 25:41 through 43. Then he will also say to those on his left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick, and in prison, and you did not visit me. After Lot was rescued from Sodom, God destroyed the city and her sister cities with brimstone and fire. In this account, the city of Gibeah was not destroyed directly by God. However, judgment would be enforced on Gibeah by other tribes of Israel. In these last two accounts of the book of Judges, the Danites and the Benjamites demonstrate callousness toward their fellow Israelites and a certain contempt for the Levites. Neither are the Levites in these accounts blameless. In the first account, the Levite Jonathan is quick to betray his benefactor Micah. In this second account, the Levite is quick to use his wife to save his own life. In the next teaching, we will examine what happened to the tribe of Benjamin and how this event almost tore apart the nation of Israel. I'm Dan Cathcart from Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.